Hey everyone, I'm Harmon from Misfit Adventure, and here is our next Turmoil of Trolls video game demo. Once again, before going, please like and subscribe to the channel, and follow any of our other social media in the links below. So, last time we covered some of the basic things like events and setting up a character and setting scene transitions. For today, I want to get into some of the more nitty-gritty details on how to, translate a tabletop RPG like Turmoil of Trolls into a video game maker. And again, in this case, we are using RPG Maker MZ. That is just so, the basic one for anybody to use. So, with that, I will begin sharing my screen. So, we are back to the standard screen with all the demo from the intro to going through the landing site, or to the ship to the landing site. Cool. So, obviously, with any tabletop RPG, we have the basic functions of the dice roll. How do we make it so that our actions have some type of consequence, be it that, whether you can add a skill, or whether you check, or whether it's just always random dumb luck? Well, let's talk about the easiest and even somewhat harder ways to do it. To start, there is, let's go right here. So as we can kind of see in this really crummy circle, there, better inner circle, we have the settings bar for the database. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to create a common event. We are here in the common events in the database. So as we can see here, we've created two common events. When you open up RPG Maker, there's usually none. So what you have to do is, you click into here, or you change the maximum. In this case, we have 4. We add 1 to 5, and we've created another space in the system to make a new common event. What a common event is, it is an event that will just happen periodically throughout the game. So rather than choosing every single scenario to, force a regular recurring action, you can create a common event that you can always program in the game so it reads to do that. So in this case, we have our most basic check, which is a skill check. So we can see here it says control variables, which I've labeled as a 2d10 roll to be a random number between 0 and 18. I'm going to go right click on this and then open up the edit feature real quick. Usually the problems of all these videos that I ran into when I was learning was that, you throw out something like variable in RPG Maker, and what is that? Well, a variable is simply put just a number value that is to be stored. Why that is important is that you are not necessarily assigning it a number right now, but it is something that you are assigning a number to at a specific point in time. So really what you are doing, and this is where it can get a little bit confusing, is you are just giving this variable a name and then asking it to be called back to later or at any point in time in the game. So in this case, we can see here, variables, there's anywhere from 1 to 20. And, we have all these multiple ones. In this case, I've set up a couple variables in here already. There's nothing special to them. Again, they are just names right now. So if we have a particular character, in this case, we're just going to automatically change it to Chan Strength and to Chan Magic after our great hero Chan. Boom. Okay, so with that, we have 4 variables to choose from. Now, Turmoil of Trolls requires 2d10 to play, which is exactly why this variable name is a 2d10 roll. To remind anyone or to inform anyone who is just now tuning in, our system with 2d10s is 11 or higher succeeds, with 0 being 0, so each dice goes from 0 to 9. So you roll 2d10 dice in order to get a desired outcome, hopefully 11 or higher. With characters having skill-based stats that can sometimes plus it up or bring it back down based on, their race penalties or whatever penalties you've assigned to your character. So for this, we have set up just a very standard roll. In this case, it's just going to give a straight up 2d10 roll, and it's going to factor in no other characteristics whatsoever. So we see that this variable that we've already named is going to be set. Here we see the various data things. In this case, I've assigned it between random, between 0 and 18, which is exactly the lowest or highest rolls you can possibly get in an encounter. And bam, we have that set. So anytime we need to do just a base skill check for no other factors in, and we just want it to roll the dice, we have the exact variables to do so. This works in Turmoil Trolls for anything like luck checks, random encounter checks, or, maybe just a streamlined process of the game flow just to make sure, something does or doesn't happen. Let's see real quick where that can get factored in. Okay, so last time we covered when Travis appears. So based on when a character hit a certain point in the region, Travis, as a character, was going to come out of the tree line, so to speak, and then move towards the player no matter what. We already have this with, options to either let him speak or to potentially attack him. So here we have all the dialogue on it. But in the last demo, we covered on let him talk and let him join the party. What happens when we choose the option to kill it? We can see the same common event that we had just set up in here, where it will just roll a regular skill check. As you can see here, we have the text option in the middle and an option that says rolled this variable character for this. So what it is showing right now is what we call, again, a control character in RPG Maker. So what I've written is for it to say it rolled a certain value. In this case, what I've set was the variable name, which should be actually variable 2. So what we'll display is exactly what that common event just rolled. So you'll get the random number between 0 and 18. Now, with that, we know that the program will actually automatically go ahead and play through. So what we have to do now, though, is from that dice roll, add or subtract, or to not add or subtract. What we'll need to do from that dice roll is we will need to give outcomes based on the roll. In this case, what I've highlighted here is going to be a very simplified version of that. So what this is saying is exactly, in plain English. If we see the 2d10 roll variable is greater than or equal to 11, the character is going to hit, and there's going to be a, well, that's handled, time to do it. Travis is gone. For those who are just tuning in now, we covered what self-switches are in the last video. However, just as a reminder for this, in this case, we say that the self-switch A is on, and then we set the second event to come on. When self-switch A comes on, nothing happens. This whole event basically just disappears. So we have the roll if it succeeds. If anything else happens, we can see that Travis is going to do some dialogue, and he's probably going to join the party on it. So, real quick, let's see what happens in action. Always save changes to the game. Okay. Just know for all those viewing, the artwork you see here is the generic assets for RPG Maker right now. The point of this video is to do something that you can just make yourself at any time. We are going to set a point where Chan has just appeared real quick. All right. Chan comes in, and then just like in our video, we have Brighttooth appearing. I'm going to skip through this as fast as I possibly can, just for the sake of those who may have already seen it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save it for right here. I don't know where I just saved that to. That's fine. I'm told that's potentially charming. Okay, so what we're about to see is Travis's options. So we're gonna go ahead and click kill it. Yeah, rolled a 2. And then see, we just failed our skill check, so Travis gets to live another day and join the party. Alright, we're not going to go through the full dialogue. But basically, if it succeeds, Travis dies. If it doesn't, it fails. So, we have those basic scene setups to it, where we have now the option of whether or not Travis gets to join the party, or, you know, you've just iced Travis before he actually gets to be fruition. But now, as we see down here in this corner, we do have to deal with the Dwarf Guard and the Bot, which from the first video is the first actual combat encounter we saw in the campaign. So, with everything, there are a couple of options here. We can see that, you know, we have conditions of whether or not Travis is in the party. You know, we have to have dialogue for that option. So if he is, we give the player the potential to actually sneak. Where again, we have the same skill checks and a whether or not he actually succeeds. I understand there is a lot of dialogue in here, but just for the sake of the video, you can see that if the roll is in fact higher than 11, you are able to successfully sneak and steal a particular item. Otherwise, the dwarf comes on and combat comes in. Whereas if you just put sneakiness for nerds, as Chan almost did in the video coming in, you almost immediately go into combat. Okay, so we can see that there are a lot of options here for a lot of combat. But the reason I wanted to focus in on it just going right into combat is to highlight the fact of now we are at the point where we can actually assign things to enemies. So, in the last video, we did cover how to do actors and classes to add our main characters in. Whether that be, you know, Klee, Chan, our NPC characters, Travis and Leon. But what do we do for enemies? As you can see from about right here, we have a button for just that. All right, so let's click on that. And bam. So, with this, we have two things we always have to do in RPG Maker. We have to set what an enemy is, and then we have to set in what encounters that enemy is going to appear. So, in the case of our first encounter, we had a bot and a dwarf. Again, these pictures are from free assets found on the internet. They are never going to be for sale. They can be generated for whatever you want for the purposes of hobbying, but these are just standard. These are not official Turmoil Trolls images whatsoever. They're just pulled for the average hobbyist. So, we have a dwarf and a bot. As you can see, the bot is a little bit heftier with not a lot of MP because obviously it takes a lot of magic to run. We've given it a bonus to attack. We've given it some heavier defenses. Nothing in the magic attack or magic defense. The dwarf is a little more resistant to everything, which makes sense for the character, but with less MP, with less HP, but a lot more MP to go off of. Here, you can just do your standard difference in settings to make sure the bot is more or less formidable, and whether or not the dwarf is a little bit of a glass cannon, or maybe he's not wearing as much armor as you thought. So from here, we can see in the right-hand column, the traits. These are what's going to be important for actually, assigning things like strengths and weaknesses and everything else. So as we can see here, these will always come standard with whatever new enemy you make. When it attacks, it'll attack, with physical damage. And then here we see a parameter called element rate. Basically what this says is that this means that the enemy is going to be weak to this. The bot is a being of metal and, mechanical nature of it, so it's going to be weak to fire and electricity, but not necessarily to the same degree. In this case, for RPG Maker, we have an element rate, and then we set it to fire from a drop-down menu, and we give it times 25%. So whatever damage is done does a little bit extra. With the damage parameters we set previously, this will not overpower it, but it'll always make sure that the enemy is actually a little bit weak to things. And then in this case, for thunder damage, it's a full 50% higher. So you'll see a much higher damage modifier on anything hit with electricity. The dwarf we just left as is. He's generally going to hit, he's going to be able to evade, and then he's going to attack with physical. However, as we can see here, we've actually given him a series of skills here, for different magic that this dwarf in particular might have. To give enemies new things, you just simply have to edit, and you add a new skill. In this case, let's give the dwarf some weird ability to dual attack. So, we've set about his ability to do a new skill. The rating, as stated in here, so the highest rating usually wins unless a condition actually comes in. In this case, the rating of 5 will set it pretty much standard with everything else. However, our conditions can mean that those are going to override it. In this case, let's say he gets super desperate and attacks between... He can't do it, 0% health. Anywhere between 5 and 25%. That means if our players get him down in health, he'll be able to actually attack a lot faster with that. And do multiple enemies. So we can see here that we have the dwarf able to use certain magic at certain hit rates. The bot is just going to attack. However, it's going to decide to spend whatever little MP it has at between 0 and 25%. We set these two enemies, but we actually have a couple scenarios in which these might actually appear. How do we decide which ones are going to be which? If we have scenarios where in some cases the bot may either turn on the dwarf, you might only fight the dwarf because you've activated the bot, how do we incorporate all these into an RPG scenario? Well, it's RPG Maker, so good news is we have options. And that's where troops come in. So troops is a tab that specifically calls out the enemies you have already designed and puts them in different scenarios. In a typical RPG Maker fashion, this would mean like you could have it so a random encounter would deal, I don't know, 3 generic harpy enemies, or 3 generic like rat enemies or goblins in a typical dungeon, or maybe a random encounter has 5. We can see from here we have an option for the bot and dwarf, or just the dwarf. These are important only so that when our players decide to go in and do a certain choice, they end up with, a variety of options, and they're only going to fight the enemies that they're supposed to story-wise. You don't want to create a scenario where, no matter what, you're somehow fighting the same enemy, even though your dialogue options should have killed it. So, let's see this plays out in a little bit of gameplay. Always save changes to the game. Going back to our party. All right, let's see if we can get a different outcome this time. If not, we get to have Travis again, which might be helpful. Yep, rolled a 10. Not going to quite do it. All right, so just like in our campaign, we have Leon, Travis, Brighttooth, and Chan all leading around. Okay, so let's see what happens. We click on our bot first. So whether you're a DM or, you're just a general game designer, you can't let your players do everything. In this case, the parties come on an unawares thing. That's why the dwarf is facing the cart. It's a very obviously generic example, but we can see what we're working with here. So we're just going to have the bot be powered down entirely. Okay. Let's see what happens when we sneak. Uh-oh. All right, in this case, since we set it super generic and didn't put a 00 in on it, we have an option where we hear the bot activate. So now, thanks to that, our troops movement is going to set it to both. And we are in a fight with the dwarf and bot option. That is a bad roll.
I mean, you're making Chan use fire. You're insane.
All right, we kind of get it though. So, what you did see in the combat is, all the skills and stuff we covered last lesson going into action. But, this can vary wildly. So, for something like a typical thing in RPG Maker, it's like, how do we have events actually happen maybe in battle or in combat, or maybe even the de-escalation of combat? So in this case, we have the bot and dwarf. So what do we want to do maybe if, say, like the dwarf went down like it did there, but the bot still stays up? So in this, we can do things like the same thing we did previously. We can set up a conditional branch to do the possible scenarios. So this could be with anything else, like whether an actor's in there. So in this case, if the enemy dwarf is dead, let's say you killed it. We can put in something like assigning the robot face. Then, choose your own adventure on where we're going to put that in. Yep, and then we're just going to abort the battle. So, now we actually have a scenario in which, bam, we now have the end of a battle sequence. Where, in this case, the dwarf, which would be holding the control node, has actually, caused the bot to stop activating. You can do a variety of scenarios in here, including skill checks. For instance, we had Chan and Brighttooth steal the control node off of the dwarf last time, which deactivated it, which caused them to just fight the dwarf. These are also possible scenarios, and we'll probably have a few shorts out to do just that. But that's how you can get through basic battles in combat. Alright. With that, that is going to probably be all for today. Hey, thank you all for watching. Please remember, like and subscribe below. And once again, please join us on our next little Misfit adventure. Thank you, everybody.